to step up on the big stool.
More technology.
What do you need help with?
Where does this go?
Oh, there it is.
It's up now.
Y'all can talk amongst yourselves for a minute. We're gonna get this going.
We're watching the
Those that are,
performance.
what's that, you're
We're
walking?
watching the performance.
This is a performance, this is called improvisation.
It
too.
is.
Our heart is in a lovely place.
Our heart is in a
Yeah.
lovely place.
Was it foggy on
Giving
the,
here.
on the hike?
Shoot it
Did you
again.
walk through the fog?
Technology
I
has
think you're-
always been my greatest resistance.
Are you getting
It's
one?
not unusual when this has happened.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Oh, you get to smell the ocean voice from here.
So those watching this later, hello, how are you doing? So be careful.
This should make it happen. George said, oh, it did.
Yes.
As Sally said, I'm very, very excited. I was here to do a ritual for Day of the Dead and a ritual for Hanukkah and holidays. But this is the first time I get to talk about the things that I care most about. I've tried to live my life without resistance, dancing with whatever comes to me. But it's not always easy. Because what you resist persists. And when you resist things, it leads to temptation and obsession, and one has to learn about those sometimes the hard way. When I was a child, it was my responsibility to go to the bakery every morning and buy the rye bread for my mother to make sandwiches. And when I did, I'd get that fresh, warm bread, and I would eat the ends of it because she didn't need those, she only needed the middle, and oh, it was so wonderful. And then after school, I'd buy these bagels fresh out of the oven, and they were so hot, and they were crispy on the outside and soft on the inside. Bread was my absolute favorite food. However, when I grew up, I became allergic to wheat.
Uh-oh.
I could never eat bread again. And so, because I couldn't eat it, I desired it, I yearned for it. And I remember a time I went to lunch with my sister. It was a beautiful restaurant, and they served this wonderful bread. And of course, I couldn't eat it because it stops me from breathing. But my sister could, and she didn't want to. How could she not want to eat what I was yearning for? And that's when I realized it was the forbiddenness of it that was feeding my desire, that was making it so, such an important thing in my life, such a push-pull. Because when you resist something, it automatically gives it a power, an intense pull on your life and power over you. And it sets up a dynamic where you're fighting yourself, struggling with the wanting and the not wanting. And this is the rejecting of it and the need for it. And sometimes it causes a split inside of you, even inside of your soul. And so I tried to work with this. I went to a party recently, and the temptation, I have to remember, click this. Part of the process. So at this party, they served a piece of cake that looked a lot like that. All that marvelous chocolate cream on it. And of course I couldn't have any of it because wheat. And so my hostess was a very gracious lady. She bought me a carrot cake, a little carrot cake, no whipped cream. I don't like carrot cake. But I sat there at the party looking at it, you know, and imagining it, that this was the best chocolate cake that ever existed in the world. And did I yearn for that. And then I realized what was I was doing. I was feeling really left out and deprived, and I wasn't having any fun. I was ruining the party for myself. And so what I decided to do, I had to find something that was the middle ground between being deprived and making myself really sick. And so I took a little sliver, a paper thin sliver of the cake, and tasted it. And in doing that, number one, it wasn't the best cake in the whole world, though it was good. It diffused the whole conflict. I no longer felt like I was deprived. And I realized that I would call that a homeopathic dosage of the poison. And one of the things it does is by allowing me to be included in that way, I wasn't setting it up for next time. Because next time I would remember how deprived I was this time, and that would make it even more intense and more desire. So I didn't have to fight myself. I found a way of not fighting myself. I have a friend who should never eat sugar. It's really bad for her. So she usually doesn't eat sugar. But every once in a while, she gets sugar. And when she does, she absolutely binges on it. And so she was looking at this dynamic, you know. Basically, you go, oh, it's been so long since I've had it, I deserve it. And there you go. And then you get into the binging. So this one time, though, she decided to look at it. And what she did was she looked under her desire. What was it about? And how could she satisfy it in a new and different way? And when she did that, then she diffused the obsession. And she was no longer fighting herself or feeding an inner conflict. And so I started looking for these techniques, these ways of dealing with life instead of the push-pull. And I looked at yoga. Now, in yoga, you get into a position and you can't go any further. And it becomes an obstacle. But you don't fight it. You don't set your will and push through it. What you do is you relax. You melt into it. And when you do, the arm expands and you can go further. And so I started looking at this, that instead of fighting, I would relax into it, like I did when I took a sliver of cake. When my friend did, when she was looking for the purpose underneath it. Instead of fighting it, we're working with it, melting into it. And sometimes I need to change the tone, but there it is. The fighting yourself. I wish I had done this earlier. There. Oh, that's the yoga we just talked about. Now, I'm caught up with myself. Sometimes I have a tendency to gain quite a bit of weight, and that's a real push-pull. Because then, you want to eat more, but you tell yourself you should eat less, and you're always doing this push-pull of temptation and resistance. But that dynamic is pretty depressing and unhealthy. So I began to look at my need for food, and I wanted to look under it. And the way I did that was I realized that my issue wasn't food, it was balance. I needed more exercise in my life. And so with the dieting, I decided instead, I can eat as much as I want. But if I eat more than I think is appropriate, I have to do more exercise. So once again, instead of resisting, I was working with that force to find something to counterbalance it, to make it balanced in my life. And that took all the struggle out of that dynamic. I did that one on time. That's a triumph. And so, resistance isn't just about bread, and it isn't just about cake. Sometimes we step back from life, and we resist life, and we pull back from our destiny. Now, Plato talked about teleology. He said that the future exerts a great deal of pressure on the present, just like the past does, and that this is the meeting ground between both. And so energies move through our lives all the time, every day of our lives. And so it's important that we meet life, not in this push-pull, but in a way that there's no resistance. Otherwise, when the energy comes through, the first time there's resistance, the second time there's concern, the third time it comes through, there can be fear from that pulling back, from that resistance, because it causes kind of a grit in our psyche that attracts it later on. Because blocked energy sets us up to miss opportunities and brings us into difficult situations, because when you block an energy, it doesn't stop, it still comes out, but it comes out in a negative way. And negative energy has just as much attracting power as positive energy. And so if you resist something, you create blocked energy, and when you're blocking it, the energy comes out in a negative way. So either you do something, or you attract to you negative situations or negative people. And so the way to diffuse it, once again, is to go and meet the energy. And that becomes very, very important in our lives, that we meet the energy. Because human beings naturally are projection machines. When you're uncomfortable with something within yourself, it's natural to project it onto someone else. That person is to blame. That person is the cause of my discomfort. And when you do that, when you project this uncomfortable energy within yourself that you're resisting, when you project it out, that sets the stage for prejudice and for scapegoating. And then that leads to rejecting some people, because we think that some people are righteous and others are not. And some people are saints and other people are sinners. And we think some things are good and some things are bad. But when you fight what you think is bad, it's the act of fighting that causes problems in itself. Once again, the resistance, the push-pull. When we see the devil in the world and we fight it, we do the devil's work. Because imagine if you thought someone was going to hurt you, seeing that evil coming at you, then you'd want to defend yourself. And you'd want to do something to defend yourself. And that could lead you to doing something hurtful to others. So once again, this dividing of the good and the bad, the right and the wrong, is definitely dangerous in our lives. So the way out, as difficult as it may sound, is to face everything that comes into our lives. Embrace everything and work with it, hopefully to heal it. And this way, we begin to dance with life in a way that can be healing for parts of ourselves. So I began to wonder, have people always been this way, always in this resistance and temptation and obsession? And I look back in history, and what I came to was St. Augustine. Before St. Augustine, there was Jesus. Now Jesus lived a life that modeled love and service. He had no prejudices. He was with the rich, he was with the poor. He served, took care of the lepers. He forgave Judas. He went with people he thought were good and people he thought were not good. He accepted everyone, men and women alike. And so people model themselves after Jesus to live a life of service. But when St. Augustine came along, centuries later, he had a different doctrine. He believed that you cannot trust your senses. You cannot trust the outer world. And when people started trying to work with that you have to live a righteous life in order to go into heaven, well then you have a lot of push-pull, but mostly everything in life becomes a temptation. Because according to St. Augustine, you have to prove yourself in this life through your sacrifices to be worthy of the next life. And that, not trusting ourselves, not trusting our senses, not trusting the world outside, opened the way for a lot of abuse of the environment and a lot of abuse of every kind. And so it allowed people to look at each other and decide who was worthy of heaven and who was not. And once again, that led to a lot of suffering in the world that we have today. But it's not always been this way. There's another way to live. And as the UU has always advocated, it's about an all and encompassing approach to life, all embracing. And so when difficulties come up, we can look at them as signposts, as messages, to understand how we can refine our own process. And when we have something come at us that scares us, the more charge it has, the more power it has, the more important the message it bears. And if we don't fight it, if we look at it, and we never see black and white, we never see good and bad, right and wrong, we just say, why is this happening in my life at this time? And what am I supposed to do with this energy? Then we can find the meaning underneath it. And we can find ways to deal with it. Maybe it's a homeopathic dosage of the poison that we accept so we can understand it better, or maybe it's looking underneath for its meaning and purpose. There's a little good, there's a little white in the black and a little black in the white, because there's a little good in everything and a little bad even in the best of situations. But bad can come from good and good can come from bad. We never know. So if we work with every situation and we use it to find our direction and our destiny, it becomes a way of dancing with life. And when you have a more advanced consciousness, bigger challenges come to you. Not because of bad karma, and not because you're not doing well, and not because of any negative reason, but the challenges come because you are here to heal yourself and each other. And so these lessons, these challenges, the big ones especially, transform us into healing agents for ourselves and each other. Because enlightenment is not a destination that we reach. Enlightenment is the way we navigate the journey along the way. It's meeting life on life's terms and working with everything to transform ourselves and transform our energy so that we approach everything with a loving and accepting attitude and help others to reach a loving and accepting attitude. Every time we do an act of kindness, it's dropping a shell in the water. It's dropping a pebble in a sea, and the ripples wave out further and further. And people ride those ripples, and they go further and further. And so in the end, every act of kindness can ultimately transform the world. Thank you.
You're going to do a meditation?
Yes, if you lower the lights. Get comfortable in your seats and close your eyes. Breathe deep and slow into your belly. upon the floor. Go deep inside that quiet place within you and see a meadow of waving grass, an open space of flowing, waving grass. And as you walk through it, quietly, within yourself, allow all the tension to melt down your body into the land. Breathe deep and slow, deeper and slower, letting all of the energy melt down into Mother Earth. And when you come to a fallen log, when you see a log and you have to climb over it, you just lift your leg with the lightness of being and step over it. For there's always this energy moving through your body, this loving energy that comes up from the earth and down from the heavens. And it flows through you, an invisible force to help you as you walk on. Allow yourself to see people in your life, helpers in your life. Some have come bringing gifts. Others have come bringing obstacles, but they're all your helpers along the way. As you walk along, recognize these helpers. Recognize their gifts. Allow yourself to ask the question, how does this serve me? And this. Allow your experience to unfold in any way it will as you meet these people, these helpers, and you ask the question, how did the hard experiences of my life grow me and transform me into the marvelous being I am becoming and the marvelous being that I am? Your experience unfold in any way it will. Now begin to bring your experience to completion. And thank your helpers. And shine the light of love and acceptance upon them, upon yourself, upon your destiny. And maybe even forgive fate for not being more gentle or more kind, as it led you to your destiny. With a deep breath, return to us. Thank you.